Today, I'm joined by Robert Heath Sr. Robert is an empowering leadership expert with over 25 years of experience leading and developing high performing teams across the military, education, and the corporate sectors. As a decorated Marine Corps officer and the CEO of Legacy Leadership Consulting Group, he specializes in helping high capacity, often underrepresented leaders master their time, mindset, and communication so they can achieve sustainable success without sacrificing themselves or their values. His mission is to help people define success on their own terms and build a legacy that they can be proud of. I'm excited to have him on the show to learn from his expertise. So, Robert, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure being here.
Yeah, it's great to meet you. Great to have a Marine Corps veteran on the show. We've had a number of Marine Corps veterans on the show, and we've learned a lot from them. I know that the Marine Corps takes leadership very seriously, so it's not surprising to find you in the leadership space.
Yes, sir. As a matter of fact, it's one of the reasons why I went to the Marine Corps, believe it or not.
Yeah, it is fantastic. I've worked with a lot of Marines over the years, and absolutely, top notch group of people that I've met that were Marines and never former Marines, always Marines, right?
There we go.
I
Yep.
love it.
No such thing as an ex-Marine.
That's right. So tell us a little bit about like your journey from you went from Marine Corps to executive coaching. You're a
Hmm.
lawyer, so you've been involved with law. You've got coaching. You've had a lot of things to shape your career, but how did that shape your leadership, and how do you use it today to develop leaders?
That's a great question. And really it started before all of that. Like I said, part of the reason why I went to the Marine Corps was leadership. See, and so for me, before I went to the Marine Corps, I was a teacher. So I taught Spanish for 6 years. I was on the pathway to doing superintendency work, being an administrator and trying to change school systems. Originally from Chicago, Chicagoland area, and I grew up. I always say I grew up kind of hood adjacent, and seeing the tale of two cities. So I went to good schools and got to be in different neighborhoods because my grandmother lived in different places, and then we eventually moved to where she was. But a lot of my family, a lot of my friends, we grew up in and experienced inner city Chicago. And so seeing that, I wanted to do something about it. I go to become a teacher. I go and my plan is to become a superintendent. And over that time, I'm teaching in Memphis City Schools at the time, which is one of the 20th largest school districts in the country. I'm a school improvement team coordinator. I'm a basketball coach. I'm doing the Spanish club and a bunch of other different things. But we have a superintendent who's from the West Michigan area, had went, gotten her degrees, gotten the qualifications. Now she's got the job. She's in charge. And I actually believed in her programming, believed in what she was trying to do to change the city. So I'm thinking, this is awesome. This is what I want to be. I get a front row seat to see how it's done. And within 18 months, she was not there.
Hmm.
And I was like, this is crazy. And it wasn't because she had stolen money. It wasn't because she had slept with the wrong person. It wasn't because she was bad at her job, quote unquote, right? As much as it was that she didn't have the leadership skills that she needed to be able to change the trajectory of the district and get people to really galvanize behind the plans and the programs that she had. She was fighting battles on all sides. She had problems with some of the business district people. She had problems with some of the politicians. She had problems. One of the other things that I did, I was a union rep for the teachers union, and so I could hear all the pushback in the unions about what she was doing as well. And it was that moment that I realized I had a blind spot because I thought she was a really good leader.
Hmm.
And I realized that I didn't know enough about leadership to do what I wanted to do, and I need to learn more and get better training and get better understanding. Otherwise, that was my future. That was going to be me having the degrees, having the title behind my name, being in the position, and not being able to lead people. And so that's really what got me to what I call my leadership sojourn, where I went to law school to understand how the system works. How do we create laws? How do we govern ourselves? What is this society that we've built? Kind of what's the foundation that it's built upon? What does the rule of law mean? And then I went to the Marine Corps because I had heard and learned that the Marine Corps is one of the greatest leadership training academies in the history of the world. And I had heard it from a lot of different people at the time that I decided to join the Marine Corps. That was the time when there had been a study that came out that said that more Fortune 500 CEOs were former Marines than any other training ground in the world. And it was just something that I was like, this is where I want to go. This is where I want to learn. And so that was part of why I joined the Marine Corps. And so I was a student of leadership when I joined the Marine Corps. It wasn't kind of like it just happened upon me. I was actually watching and paying attention. And what I learned that kind of transformed my experience of leadership was I used to think that if you were a bad leader, it was because of a couple of things. Either A, you didn't care about people, B, you were lazy, or C, you were kind of an egomaniac and just had to be and on a power trip. And what I learned was that there were so many leaders that were struggling and that cared about people, that worked really hard, that were mission first, were others first focused, right? Purpose driven people, but they were suffering in silence because they had never learned how to lead. They had never learned how to
Mm.
to shape people and to help people to actually be the best that they could be. And they were suffering doubly because they're suffering because they're not doing good at their job and they know they're not doing good, but they're also suffering because they see their people suffer because of their failings. And that's really what led me into the leadership space, was to help leaders, but also help so that they could be the best they could be, but also help leaders so that their people can be the best that they could be.
Yeah, I love that you say that because I one of the reasons I've got into the leadership space was a similar. I had 22 years working in global companies, and I just saw so many people thrown into leadership roles without any training. The best individual contributor became the manager of the department, and you could be a great engineer, but to be an engineering manager was a whole different set of skills. And I think that's where I watched it, and as a former naval officer, I had learned leadership, through my education, through my time on the submarine. So leadership came sort of naturally to me because of what I learned in the Navy. But what I saw was a lot of young people, thrown to the fire with no training whatsoever. Like they get a promotion, and that's good. They were excited that they get recognized for their
Yeah.
individual contributions. But then
Hmm.
going into leadership, it's a whole different set of skills. And to your
Yeah.
point, these people cared and they wanted to do a good job. They weren't bad leaders. They just were never trained. So I love
That
that
part.
that was a motivation for you as well.
Yeah. And the funny thing about that, the training that we get as professionals is not only not leadership training, it's often antithetical to being a good leader. So being a good
Mm,
professional means that you get stuff done. You shut off all of the distractions, all of the other people's problems, excuses, reasons why they can't get stuff done, and you figure out a way. You find a way to make it happen, and you put the load on yourself if that is what's necessary,
yeah,
because as a professional, you get stuff done. You want to be the person that's the go to person. Leadership is the exact opposite set of skills. Your
right.
job is not to be the go to person. It's not to be the person that makes sure it gets done. It's to be the person that makes sure that the team gets it done. It's the person that empowers the people to be their best, that removes obstacles from them and helps them to be the problem solvers rather than you being the person that has to get everything done. And that requires you to be very intentional about learning people and listening to people and understanding what are their problems, what are their idiosyncrasies, what are their strengths, what are their learning styles, what are the things that they do differently than the way that you do it. And so oftentimes great professionals struggle because they're like, I know how to get this done. Do it the
Yeah,
way that I'm
yeah.
saying do it. And that way works horribly for the person that you're leading.
Yeah, because you never get the people don't get a chance to develop and they don't get a chance to actually learn. So what ends up happening is the subject matter expert, who's the best in the department, becomes they carry the whole world on their shoulders, and every
Mhm.
other employee is like saying, hey, can I give me a chance to have the ball,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah,
they don't
exactly.
realize it because they feel like they're helping by taking on the load, but in
Exactly.
actuality they're hurting their team by it. Yeah.
That's it. And they don't even recognize that part you just said. They don't realize it because they can't even see how different it is. I remember the analogy that I normally give to groups when I'm talking about this is like, I'm 6 foot with a 6'7" wingspan. So I can reach up on top of shelves and grab stuff real easy. Right. But if I'm talking to somebody that's 5 foot tall and I say, just go over there and reach up and grab it. Right. They're not going to be able to do that no matter how hard they want to. And the solution may actually be to move it to a different place in the warehouse because they're the person that has to go grab it. Instead, they're getting step stools, they're climbing up on top of stuff, they're more dangerous, they're unsafe, all of these things because they're trying to follow the pathway that I put together that doesn't have any of those dangers when I'm doing it, but I'm not looking at what their experience is. I'm telling them from what my experience is. And leadership is all about what we say at Legacy is leadership is facilitating the manifestation of greatness in others. And
Mm.
so it's about being able to see them, see what their greatness is, and help to bring that greatness out rather than just reliving the glory days of your greatness.
I love that. So talk us through that. How do you, you're working with these young, either young leaders or maybe either new leaders, young leaders, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe ones that have been around a while but still
Mm-hmm.
struggling.
Yeah.
So these are people that do care. They want to make a difference in their companies. Um, how do you help them align themselves with, say, purpose, performance, and of course having some level of peace about their job, and then being effective without actually carrying the ball the whole time? So how do you help them?
No, that's a great question. And there's a pathway, right? Because one of the things that we help leaders to understand is exactly that they've never learned leadership. So get comfortable with going back and being a learner again
Mm.
and taking away from them the stigma of you're supposed to know. I remember I was consulting in a manufacturing facility, and one of the things that all the supervisors were so scared about talking to their plant manager about was every time we go in, he says, "Well, you should know this. You're a supervisor." Right? And of course, they didn't know. And so now they're stuck between a rock and a hard place because they need help, they need coaching, they need learning. But the person that they're supposed to get it from is telling them that they should already know. They're supposed to already have it. And so what we do, because that happens to so many people where they're stuck in that rock and that hard place where they can't ask for help, but they need the help to be better. And so the first thing we do is we create what I like to call brave spaces. I can't create a safe space for you. I don't know what's safe for you, and what's safe for you may not be what's safe for me, right? But what I can do is create a brave space where we're going to tackle whatever we need to tackle together, where we're not going to sit in judgment and shame, where we're going to look at things objectively, and we're going to follow the advice of the late great Dr. Maya Angelou, and we're going to give ourselves grace for what we didn't know when we didn't know it. When we know better, we're going to do better, and we're going to hold ourselves accountable to do better now instead of feeling shame and guilt and all these negative things about past that we can't change. And then we take them along the three levels of leadership because that's the other thing that I think oftentimes doesn't get discussed. There's three ways that you lead. First, you have to learn to lead yourself and to lead yourself properly, to master your time rather than constantly just taking care of whack-a-mole firefighting, which doesn't allow you to get to be the most productive and doesn't allow you to have the most impact. A lot of people are extremely efficient, but they're extremely efficient at doing the wrong things.
Mm.
And so then they just wind up still feeling like they don't get anything done. Right. And so that's the first thing that we do. And that really starts with the person, teaching them how to understand what's their purpose as a person. How does this role fit into your life's purpose? What's your identity? Who are you? Right. And not just as an employee, but who are you as a husband or a wife, as a father or a mother, as a brother, as a sister? Like, what is your identity and who are you as a person? And then how are your activities, which work is one of those activities, how is that fitting into this bigger picture so that every day you're not just doing what needs to be done or doing what you have to do, you're getting to do things that are moving you along the pathway towards your grand purpose, right? And so now you get to be excited about the work that you do, no matter whether it's sweeping a floor or building, right, a 747 jet or whatever the case may be. So the first thing we do, like I said, is we teach them how to align their lives personally so they can be as effective as possible every day. So now they're actually excited about the work that they get to do, even regardless of the people that they get to do it with, right? And then the next stage, of course, is then learning how to lead people. And leading people is all about you being able to help them get aligned, help them figure out what they need to do, and to set them up so that they can do the best that they're capable of, which means you have to be able to see their strengths. You have to be able to understand their weaknesses. You have to be able to become, instead of the chief problem solver, you become the chief obstacle remover, right? Your people are capable of solving problems, but sometimes they can't see the problem. And so your job is to remove the obstacle so that they can see the problem and apply their strengths to solving it. And so we teach people how to do that and how to align everything that everybody's doing with the mission of the organization, but not from a perspective where they have to pick between taking care of themselves and taking care of the mission. I remember, you probably remember this growing up in an officer training, right? There's two objectives that we have, right? Mission accomplishment and troop welfare.
Yeah.
And the funny thing that I remember when I was in the basic school was that some people could not understand how to deal with those two and recognize that the reason that we have two is because they're both important. The only time that you have to look at the ordinal number of one versus two is when they're in conflict, which is very rare.
Mm.
The best leaders take care of their troops and accomplish the mission, not accomplish the mission in spite of taking care of their troops, right? And it's just, it was so funny. Like I remember, I don't know if you had this experience, but we were in so this we have 2 weeks in the base school called range week, where we're at the range for every day. Breakfast is early, so we're up at 04 for reveille and assembly, and then we got to stand in line and wait for breakfast. And it's a wagon wheel, so first platoon is first day one, they're sixth day two, right? And second platoon, same thing. And so once you're in the sixth position, you're in line for an hour and 15 minutes just waiting to get chow. Like there's really nothing that you can do. The barracks are a stone's throw from the line. And we all got, refrigerators and microwaves and food in chow there. So everybody's trying to go and eat because you're only going to get like 10 minutes to get through the line, get your food, and then you got to get your pack on, and we got a 2 mile hump out to the range. So nobody wants to do that. It's uncomfortable. It's not fun. You're not going to get breakfast. And the student platoon commander is sitting there and he's like, but the company commander said everybody's got to go through the line. We're like, yeah, everybody can go through the line. We're all here. Everybody's present and accounted for. We're going to go back to the barracks. You know exactly where we're going, and we'll all be back in line 10 minutes before everything is supposed to happen so we can go through the line. This can work so that
Yeah.
we can be taken care of and we can accomplish the mission. He was like, well, no, that's just the way it's got to be. We just all got to stand in the line. And we were trying to explain there was a group of us, about 4 or 5 of us, right? And I'm kind of the elder statesman. I was the oldest guy in the company at the time because, like I said, like I told you when we were off camera, I joined when I was 29. By this time, I'm 33, almost 34, because I'm going through the basic school after I finished law school. And so we're there, and he's like, no, it's just got to be that way because the company commander said, we're like, no, you're making the decision. You need to understand it. Like people are going to know that you're the reason that they didn't get to eat. And he couldn't get it. And he was a good guy. Like I'm still friends with him to this day. Like he's a nice guy. But when I tell you that from that day forward, every time he was in charge, he got the least compliance of the entire platoon that you could get. People wouldn't do stuff to get themselves in trouble, but they also wouldn't do stuff to keep him from getting in trouble, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting.
And
I think that's one of the things that I see that people miss is that the most important word that you said there was and, right? It's the people and the mission, and I think that,
yes,
and I love the fact that you say that often they're not in conflict, right? Most of the
right,
time they're not. So you can take care of the people and take care of the business, right? Or in my
exactly,
case, the business, right? Or whatever the goals of the organization are. And there are
right,
times when they do come in conflict. And oftentimes I say, we make the decision in the best interest of most of the people, right? So,
exactly.
in the case where you have to do something like a downsizing or what have you, but you do your best to have the least impact on the people that you have when you have to make
Exactly.
those tough decisions. But I think that, like you said, often people think it's the mission only or it's the people only. I've seen some leaders that it was a nice,
Yeah.
it's like it's a party. It's take care of everybody. And then
Right. We want to be your friend. Yeah.
right, but
Yeah.
then the mission doesn't get done, right? And so those people
Exactly.
get fired and they don't end up, helping the organization too. So the best leaders can figure out how to do both, right?
That's the key. That's the and I think it's important to recognize, right? When your people know that you're taking care of them, they give you grace for the times when it's obvious to everybody that you're going to have to sacrifice. Just like in the military, there were times when we had to do stuff that we didn't want to do, and everybody understood it's just the way it's got to get done. But when that's every day, no, you're lazy or you just don't know how to lead me and I can't follow you because every day I'm getting the short end of the stick to get this mission accomplished. And I know that's not how it has to be.
Right.
right?
Right.
And there's been a number of organizations that I've worked with and coached, and one of the things that we do is exactly that. Is we help them to ask, what do the people want first? Because what often happens is the leaders are stuck not knowing what the people want. And so they're making plans and they're thinking that the only way to get there is this way. But if you go to the team and you say, hey, here's where we need to go, here's what we need to accomplish, and you get feedback from the team, they will give you ideas that work. And here's the beauty of it: if they give you ideas that don't work, you can give them the problems that you're seeing and ask them to overcome it. And they will then come up with ideas that you may have never thought about to fix that problem, where you would have thought that this would have been something they hated, but they actually like this better than your plan.
Yeah.
Right. And that for me was always the beauty of it, because when I could get my teams to own the plan, and when I help my leaders, when they get their teams to own the plan, it changes the dynamic, it changes the energy. Because if it doesn't work, if something's a problem, right, because you were willing to listen to them, because you were willing to see them and meet them where they were, because you were willing to let them know that you valued them, they're willing to own that failure and now do it the way that you asked them to do it, with no questions asked and no grumbling.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, they have ownership. I think that's one of the things that we miss out on. I think, I always say that leadership is a people business, and I also
Yeah.
say that people are messy. And it's true. People are messy, but they're
Yes.
also amazing, right? And they're
That
they're they're
part.
going to solve problems, maybe not in the way that you would want them solved, but they're also, if you can allow them to bring their creativity to work and own a problem and own a solution, right? And you're there to
Yes.
just guide and direct and sort of be the guardrails, if you will, to
Yes.
keep everything aligned, and then sort of make sure that everybody knows where we're headed. Right, this is where we're headed, and here are the
Hmm. Hmm.
guardrails. But other than that,
Yep.
like, I'm here to sort of, to empower you. Like you said, very important what you said. I'm here to remove obstacles, right? So
Yes.
that we can as a team achieve these goals together. Right. I
Yep.
think
Yep.
that's a really important, one of the most important thing a leader does is you're there, obviously make sure that the goal is very clear. Everybody knows what the goal is,
Exactly.
but also
Exactly.
what's preventing you from reaching that goal. And I
That
think
is one of the most
leaders
powerful
miss out on
questions
that.
leaders can
Yeah.
ask. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's one of the most powerful questions leaders can ask. And the reason why I am such a proponent of empowering leadership is because the definition of empowering is to enable another person to act on behalf of, right? So to enable somebody to act on my behalf, I have to remove the barriers to them acting.
Hmm.
Right. And oftentimes the barriers to them acting are things that I don't even recognize are barriers. I remember I was down in your neck of the woods and I was consulting with a group, and we were actually up on Chapel Hill, and we were in a hotel and we were on the second floor, and I was explaining to the team of leaders, part of the reason that you're having the problems that you're having is because you can see these problems, these issues that you see. But it's like us being up here on the second floor. On the second floor, we can see, and you know how it is where it's hilly. You can see down and across the valley and up onto the next mountaintop, and you can see all of this from the second floor. But on the first floor, you just see trees, right?
Yeah.
And if what you're trying to tell somebody to do is go through the trees and around this house and down here, which you can see perfectly from where you are, they don't have the perspective to see the vision that you're casting. And so you've got to do one or two things. Either A, bring them up to your level where they can see. And what does that mean from the metaphor? That means give them access to the information that you're dealing with. Talk to them about the problems that you're actually addressing, right? Oftentimes we keep those things cloistered and only leadership knows what we're really dealing with. And then we want everybody to just go along with what we're saying. And if you have to keep it secret for whatever reason, so you can't bring them up to the second floor, got it, understood. Then take what you know from the second floor and walk down to see what they see from the first floor so that you can explain it in terms that make sense given what they're seeing with that their limited vision or their limited information. And that's where becoming a chief problem, I'm sorry, taking off our chief problem solver hats and putting on our chief obstacle remover hats make for better leadership, because the whole goal is for you to be able to do it. I already know I can do it. That's
Hmm.
how I got to where I am. The reason that they put me in leadership is because I'm supposed to get you to do it.
I love that. I love that. It sort of makes me think of something I say often, that you can't solve a problem right, with your people in your office or in a boardroom. You got
Exactly.
to get to,
Exactly.
you got to go. Oftentimes you have to go to where the people are and see things from
That's
their
it.
perspective and see
That's it.
what they are dealing with. Like I said, oftentimes many leaders are stuck on that second floor and they're saying, I don't
Mhm.
understand why people can't see what I see. It's like, have you been to the first floor? Have you seen
Exactly,
what
exactly.
they're
And you
dealing
know this
with?
from the manufacturing world, right? Go to the
Yeah.
Gemba, right?
Yeah,
Like
go to
that's the whole
Gemba. Yeah.
idea.
The first episode of this podcast, we talked about Gemba was the first thing we talked about. Yeah, go to where
Yeah,
the value is, go to where your people are.
exactly.
That's where you're going to
Exactly.
learn.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it gives you a different perspective. Because one of the things that happens, and this is what I talk about, especially because I deal a lot with knowledge workers as well as manufacturing. And in knowledge work, one of the things that happens, it's so much harder because the work is happening in someone's head. And the problem is this thing that I call the curse of knowledge, right? And that is the moment we learn something, the moment we understand something, it dramatically shifts the paradigm and it shifts the filter through which we see reality. But we're unaware of it. Like if you go back to when you learned how to ride a bike, if you can even remember when that was, most people can't remember what it was like to not know how to ride a bike,
Mm, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because everything in your mind shifted, and all that it is that riding a bike is this thing, and you know how to do it. Understanding what it's like to not know that, it's hard to kind of step out of our present reality and get into that other reality. And so often that's what happens for leaders because we know whatever it is that we know that helps us to get past that obstacle. So things look easy to us or they think they shouldn't be that hard. But we're not able to really understand what's making it hard. I remember I was consulting, and this is another manufacturing plant, and I had asked the lady to get me something, just an SOP, a basic SOP for a process, because I was helping in an assembly area and they were taking way too long to do things in the assembly area. And I didn't know or understand what the actual proper process was. And they didn't have an SOP that was already written. So I just asked her to kind of get me an SOP for this. A couple of days go by and she's like, oh, I wasn't able to get that to you. I'll have it for you tomorrow. Okay. So I go by the next day and she doesn't have it for me the next day. Now, in my mind, I'm sitting there and I'm like, I know she's not blowing me off because that's not the type of person that she is. I've been working with her and she's really diligent. But I also know that this is not a hard task. Like this
Mm,
should only take 5 or 10 minutes. You can't tell me that you haven't had 5 or 10 minutes over the course of the last 4 days to do something. But before I let myself get upset and get frustrated, I leaned into curiosity and I asked the question. I said, hey, how long do you think it's going to take? How much time do you think you're going to need to get this thing done? Because I've noticed that you've been really busy and you haven't been able to get it done. How long do you think it's supposed to take? And she was like, oh, I'm going to need about a half hour to an hour to get it done.
mm,
Instantly, I understood she's not thinking the same thing that I'm thinking. And what had happened was I had explained to her that I just wanted her to write down the steps. I didn't need a full blown SOP, but that was 3 days before. So when she went to go do it, all she's remembering is SOP. So she's thinking time studies, she's thinking of observations, she's thinking detailed
yeah.
steps,
Yeah.
which makes perfect sense that it would take 30 minutes to an hour to get that done. I was like, no, 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 no. All I need you to do is write down from memory what are the steps that need to happen in this process so that I can go do the time study, so that I can go figure this out. I just want to make sure that I'm watching it appropriately. She's like, that's all you need? Hold on, I'll get that for you right now. And she took 5 minutes and wrote it down and made it happen. It was a miscommunication
Yeah.
that was showing up as something different. But what I had to do is I had to ask the question, what's the obstacle that's keeping you from getting this done?
Mm, yeah, yeah. I love it because I think that's oftentimes we don't ask the question. We don't have curiosity, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and there's always oftentimes there can be miscommunication between you give somebody a task and what you thought the task was and what they thought the task was. So that
Yes.
miscommunication. So oftentimes I always say that we should ask if in the Navy we had verbatim repeat back. So you gave an order, you get the
Mm-hmm.
repeat back. Left full
Yep.
rudder, steady course 250. Left full rudder,
Yep.
steady course 250. I sir,
You're
right?
right.
So there's
Yep.
acknowledgement that we know. And I said, well, we don't do that in business, but we
Right.
should ask for clarification. Do you understand what I'm asking for? And I think
That's
just
the key
just
thing.
asking for clarification and have them repeat what they thought the assignment was can really avoid that miscommunication that happens
You're
oftentimes.
100%.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
100% correct. As a matter of fact, what I talk to my clients about so often is nothing messes up organizations and tasks more than the belief that communication has happened when it's actually only transmission has taken place,
Right.
right?
Right.
So many people think about communication as I sent an email, I told them, I let
Right.
them know, I phone called them, we had a meeting about this. And it's like, yes, but communication is a process whereby there's transmission, there's receipt, and then there's feedback on the receipt that says yes, and that confirms receipt and receipt of the entire message. Like you said, when we do call for fire, it's the same thing. When you're doing radio calls, you're doing things and roger that over and out. There's a bunch of feedback that comes back to let you know that yes, the message got through. And if you don't get that feedback, you can, as the sender, cannot move on as if you have completed your job.
Yes.
However,
Yeah.
so often as leaders, we talk to people and we tell them things. We give state of the company addresses. We put out core values. We put out mission statements. We put out all of these things, and we never create a feedback loop that actually tells us that it was received and understood.
Yeah. It's a monologue, right? Instead of a dialogue, right? We like our monologues, right? And we wonder why people don't
Exactly.
understand, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. And the funniest thing, like one of the things I teach my leaders so often is to just ask a simple question, which is, so what did you just hear me say?
Yes. Yes.
Right. And it's so hard for people because they're so used to just saying, do you understand, and getting that nod, not realizing that that smile and that nod is a conditioned response that is, do this whether you understand or not, because not understanding is not acceptable.
Right. Right. I love
Right. And
that.
we've learned that ever since we were in elementary school.
That's right.
Do
That's
you
right.
understand? Yep, I
Hmm.
get it.
Yeah.
Right. Do they understand? No. And again, being a former teacher, I dealt with kids that did that all the time. And so I had to learn as a teacher, how do you validate learning rather than just validate teaching, right?
Yeah.
It's not that I taught it, it's did they learn it was my barometer, was my measuring stick. And so I had to develop tests that actually showed me that learning had occurred, not regurgitation, not rote memorization, but actual learning. And so I was a big fan of project-based learning. As a Spanish teacher, right? I'm a language teacher. So we would every quarter, the kids would have certain questions that they would have to learn how to use in conversation. And then we would have a conversation and I would be able to test them one-on-one to see whether or not they understood how to have that conversation, what it was meaning. And I think that so many leaders, again, don't have that skill set of communication. It's one of the largest drains on a business. As a matter of fact, most people don't realize that miscommunication costs businesses on average 1 day a week
Mm,
per employee of productivity.
I believe it. I've seen it. So I absolutely. Well, Robert, this has been fantastic. What final message would you like to leave with our listeners?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I would like listeners to remember is that you don't get to pick your hand in leadership. And so your job is to get the best out of the people that you have, regardless of who you're dealt, right? And in order to do that, you've got to make sure that there's alignment in your organization. You got to make sure that there's alignment in yourself between three things. Number one, your purpose. If you don't know your purpose, it's really hard to align it. If you don't know your organization's purpose, it's really hard to get everything in alignment with it. Number two, your identity. Who are you and who are you trying to be? Is that in alignment with your purpose, or is there some sort of problem that's going on there? And then the third thing is your activities. If your purpose, your identity, and your activity are aligned, you can make quantum progress towards your objectives and blow through all of the obstacles that are out there. And so that's what we do at the Legacy Leadership Consulting Group. That's what I do with my Legacy Builders Academy. We help people to align their lives so that they can actually live the life that they were born to live and have the organization that they're really truly capable of being so that ordinary people can do extraordinary things.
I love it. I love it. We need more of that in leadership today. So I really, I'm excited of the work that you're doing because I think it's really, really important. I think leaders oftentimes are frustrated, but if they get those things aligned, that can make their life a lot better and kind of eliminate that frustration. They can be more effective and live a much more frustration-free life if they can get that figured
Yes.
out. So, well,
Yes.
this has been great. How can our listeners find out more about you and the work that you do?
Oh, well, they can just go to my website, www.robertheathsenior.com. and that's with an SR.com. Again, RobertHeathSr.com.
Well, fantastic. We're going to put the link in the show notes for Robert's resources, and I highly encourage you to reach out to him if something in here kind of resonated with you. Maybe you're one of those individual contributors that got promoted, and you're sort of carrying the world on your shoulder, and you're trying to figure out how do you get more people engaged, get more people involved. It's not that you're a bad leader; it's just that you haven't learned some of these skills to be able to empower your team and get them sort of to help you carry the burden of the work that you're trying to do. So, if you're one of those individuals, or maybe something that Robert said really resonated with you in terms of alignment, reach out to Robert. So we got his link in the show notes or here below in the notes. Reach out to him, ask him a question, and tell him you heard him on this podcast and you need a little help to become more effective. And he's the guy, he's the expert. He's going to help you get that done. So I highly encourage you to do that. So Robert, I want to thank you for coming on the show. Thanks for sharing your expertise. And I really appreciate it. Learned a lot today.
Appreciate you having me. This was really fun. Great conversation.
I enjoyed it as well. Well, that's it for today. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Rennie saying take care and lead well.